It is time for another thrilling edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. Also, you can hear us over the air on 98.5 The Fan in Las Vegas and also 1140 The Bet in Las Vegas. Thank you to both our podcast and radio audience for joining us as always. And again, I say us because it's not just me. No, it's me and Midtown Moe Moten. That is Moe Moten. He's the national NFL writer at Bleacher Report. You can also catch his Raiders columns up on sportsnot.com. Follow him on Twitter at Moe Moten, Moemoton. I don't know. We might have to change your Twitter handle, man. We might have to put the Midtown there, don't you think?
I thought, you know what's funny? I thought about doing that over the weekend. I was like, I should just sneak in Midtown Moe instead of Moe Moten on my Twitter handle. But something told me I'll wait a little while. I'll let the Midtown Moe thing catch on a little longer.
Well, Midtown Moe's about to get bigger because we got some special things coming in the next few weeks, which I'm not going to tell you about because they're going to be a surprise, but we'll get there.
Really?
By the way, yes. Oh, yeah. I'm just teasing you. Also, follow me on Twitter, LV Gully. We will interact with you guys unless you're completely a head case, and then we just ignore you. But otherwise, we talk to some head cases. We got good head cases. We got bad head cases. We love talking to Raider Nation. We love talking to you guys and mixing it up. Even when we disagree with respect. It doesn't have to be name calling. We can just disagree, which is totally cool. I am at LV Gully as well. Follow the show, SNB Today. By the way, if you don't subscribe to the show, what's wrong with you? Mo, these people don't subscribe. I don't understand what's going on. They're not subscribing, some of these people.
The subscribe button is kind of small. YouTube needs to enlarge the subscribe button, so it's like a big giant button on the screen.
They do, but also, I mean, they can subscribe on Apple for iTunes. They can subscribe or subscribe on Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever they're at, the official Odyssey app, which is killer, by the way. But even you can just say it. If you're in your kitchen or your bedroom and you have one of those Amazon devices or a Google device, all you have to say is subscribe Silver and Black Today podcast. And guess what happens? Boom, you're in. So thank you for doing that. All right, Mo, let's get into the news this week. Of course, the NFL world was in between two cities last week. They were in between Las Vegas and Phoenix. Of course, the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, but it was the Pro Bowl games, not the Pro Bowl game anymore. It's not a football game anymore. Well, there's kind of a football game, but the Pro Bowl games were in Las Vegas, so a lot of attention on Las Vegas. Did a great job. But overall, the Raider who was making the most news last week was one Mr. Davante Adams. And no, it wasn't because he was making incredible catches in the flag football game, although he made a couple. He was trolling us all on Twitter. He was dropping hints left and right, making national news. Anytime somebody would tweet about Aaron Rodgers, a rumor or something, he would say goofy things like, I'll help him move in my neighborhood, saying all sorts of things to make it look like, and for the internet to go crazy enough that fans start to think that there's fire where there's smoke. And he said it later, coming into Monday, actually, that, I'm kind of trolling. So we don't know how serious he was, but it sure got Raider Nation and the NFL world a buzz about the possibilities of one Mr. Aaron Rodgers coming to Las Vegas.
I must have seen at least 3 Twitter handles that basically said, I have sources that say Aaron Rodgers is going to sign with the Raiders. I saw one Twitter handle that said they but they have people basically inside the Packers organization. This is a former Packers player. I don't want to put his Twitter handle out there because if he is wrong, I don't want to blow him up because I know Raider fans will come after him. But basically, this guy who used to play for the Packers said that he's been told that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Raider. There was another Twitter handle that said that Aaron Rodgers told his agent that he prefers the Raiders over the Jets. That's unconfirmed, but I could see why, because Davante Adams is in Las Vegas and not in New York. Now, New York does have Paul Hackett, does have Nathaniel Hackett, who's the son of Paul Hackett.
Yes.
So, and he has a working relationship with Aaron Rodgers. So I could see why the Jets would hire Nathaniel Hackett, other than they like his play calling, which I don't see why you'd be attracted to that after what happened in Denver, but that's a whole different story. But anyway, there were so many different loose sources out there on Twitter saying Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Raider. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Raider. And I would say to those people that there's no way that Ziegler, McDaniels, and that crew would let that out, even if that was the plan, because are we forgetting where they come from?
Right.
They come from an organization where there aren't any leaks. So when Davante Adams was acquired by the Raiders, a lot of people said that it was dead at one point. It was Derek Carr. If you remember what David Carr said on the NFL Network, it was Derek Carr who picked up the phone and made it work. That didn't get out until David Carr said something about it. The acquisition of Chandler Jones, a lot of people didn't see that coming. The trade involving Yannick Ngakoue and Rocky Ya-Sin, no one saw that coming. So all of these big moves that the Raiders have made, these moves for notable players, haven't been telegraphed. So I don't have a reason to think that this would be telegraphed. I think it was Davante Adams having a lot of fun with it. Aaron Rodgers having a lot of fun with it. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying at this point, I'm sure that they don't even know what the future holds for Aaron Rodgers.
No, and as you and I talk about on this show all the time, Mo, conversations always happen.
Oh, yeah.
GMs call about all kinds of players. Doesn't matter, okay? Hey, Cincinnati, would you be willing to trade Joe Burrow? No, of course not. Okay, great. Just call him to see. You never know, right? Things can happen. So I would imagine the Raiders are interested. That does not mean there's been talks that it's imminent and any kind of stuff. And I think, too, that we another example of how quiet this organization has kept big moves is even the benching of Derek Carr. I mean, you have beat writers who are around the team day after day after day. Usually, when you know a guy might get benched or something, you usually kind of start to hear it leak out a little bit. Well, they're getting frustrated. They might bench him. Didn't hear a thing, and then all of a sudden, boom, it happens, right? Day before we find out what's going on after the conversation happened, and whoever let that out, you can leave that to your imagination. But needless to say, this organization, and if it's pursuing Aaron Rodgers or even conversing about the possibility of it, I don't think it would get out. I think you're seeing a lot of people pull chains. I think Davante Adams was having fun. I also think the truth with Davante Adams was he would love to have Aaron Rodgers in Las Vegas. And so these tweets and these funny things he's saying, he's trying to get the attention of his friend. Whether they've talked or not about it, I don't know. But the possibility of, hey, trying to recruit, just like you talked about Derek Carr with Davante Adams, he's doing the same thing. So that's why I keep telling Raider Nation, look, we're talking about it on this show. We're going to have our guest, Pete Doherty, from the Green Bay Press-Gazette on in the next segment to give us specifics from Green Bay on what's going on. But overall, just I would temper your expectations.
Right. I mean, if we're being honest, I would assume that Rodgers is on the Raiders' radar. Simply because, as I've said before plenty of times, I think Josh McDaniels understands that he needs to win some football games. And you're probably not going to do a lot of that with Jarrett Stidham as your starter. You're probably not going to do a lot of that with Jacoby Brissett as your starter. You're probably not going to do a lot of that with a rookie as your starter, though he did have Mac Jones and won 10 games with the Patriots. But remember, that Patriots team had a top 3 defense.
Yep.
The Raiders do not have that support for their rookie quarterback if they draft one and start him. So different situation. But as far as Rodgers is concerned, I think I'm in the lane with you, and I think our buddy Evan Grote at Just Pod Baby has also said this, that Rodgers may be an upgrade over Derek Carr, but you don't want to give up too much for Rodgers because the Raiders have so many holes to fill. So as we're going to ask Pete Doherty, what is the asking price for Aaron Rodgers if he's available? If he says it's a 1, which I think it's going to be at least a first-round pick, then you may think about, okay, we'll give up a 1 for Aaron Rodgers, have a quarterback. We still have a second. Hopefully we could trade Derek Carr and get another second so that if we want to move up, we can. But if he says it's going to cost multiple firsts or first and multiple seconds, then you're like, whoa, wait a minute. We need our draft picks because we need that cheap, capital coming in to help our defense, our defensive line on the interior, our linebacking core. We need a cornerback. We need a safety. We need upgrades on the offensive line. We need so many things. We can't afford to give up multiple premium draft picks for Aaron Rodgers because he'll just wind up being 9-8 as he was with the Green Bay Packers this past season.
Exactly. And here's the other thing too, Mo. You talk about draft compensation. So if Pete Doherty tells us in the next segment, from my conversations, because I know in prepping with him for the show today, he told me he's talked to some folks in the league, some player personnel folks, to get a sense for what it would take to get Aaron Rodgers out of Wisconsin. If you tell me too that it's the number 1 this year, then to me that's a deal breaker. because I get it. You a number one pick, but if you give it a number one pick this year, that's a seventh overall pick. For a great quarterback in his day, no doubt about it. Still a very good quarterback, to your point, a top 10 quarterback. But he's 40 years old, and in my view, he's fallen off a little bit. I still love Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, by the way. I'm just saying he is not, just like we said with Tom Brady, he's not the Tom Brady that's 35, and Aaron Rodgers is not even the quarterback he was when he's 35, and it's been 5 years later. So he's going on 40, and so to me, are you going to give up the number 7 overall pick? And as I make the argument in my Sports Knot piece today that just ran this morning up on the site is no. In fact, I say you skip Aaron Rodgers and you do whatever you can to get C.J. Stroud. I think you have to think boldly and you have to go the future. Now, I know the Raiders have been burned on picks in the past, including quarterbacks. Number 2, whose name will not be mentioned on the show because fans will get mad at me, Jamarcus Russell. But anyway, that pick, all those things, that's fine. But to go in a win now mode to me would be the wrong message to not only the fans, but also to the players in the organization. I understand Devontae Adams wants a quarterback to throw him the ball. I get it. But a kid like C.J. Stroud, somebody like that who can come in and develop, you get a veteran there, you have Stidham there already. To me, the Raiders have got to play chess. They've got to think 5 years down the road. They can't think about the next 3 years. Even if Josh McDaniels wants to think that way because he might be on the hot seat, Mark Davis then has to give him a pass. You've said this in the past. Say, listen, we're going to let you draft the rookie quarterback. That gives you an extra year, whatever it is, to get up to speed. So we expect next year to be rough. In between, depending what happens, maybe he doesn't win out and you go with your veteran. But overall, Mo, this team has got to get out of the rut of trying to win now when they don't have enough pieces to win now.
I would give up a 1 for Aaron Rodgers under 3 conditions. Number one, Aaron Rodgers will have to restructure his deal so we get some cap relief so that I can use that cap space to spend on other players in free agency if we're not going to have our 1. Number 2, the Raiders would have to get something for Derek Carr. Because then if you get it, let's say you get it, and then you have to get a second-round pick for Derek Carr. Because then if you get a second-round pick for Derek Carr, then you have 2 second-round picks. So if you want to move up into the first round, you can with those 2 second-round picks. It's an option. The third condition is the Raiders don't feel too great about the quarterback class coming in. So let's say they're lukewarm on all the top quarterback prospects, and let's say they prefer a Tanner McKee out of Stanford in the second round.
Yeah.
Right? If they're lukewarm on the top prospects at quarterback, then I could see them giving up a 1 for Aaron Rodgers. Again, if he restructures his deal and they get something for Derek Carr, because again, you don't want to give up premium capital because even the number 7 overall pick, that can get you a ready-made impact play on the defensive side of the ball. That Absolutely. Can get you a better offensive tackle. Now, I've come back to earth a little bit on Jermaine Illuminar. I've done a lot of looking at his play in the games over the past, 2-3 months of the season. Mm-hmm. He actually played well. I'm not saying he's a Pro Bowl player, but for a guy who didn't have a lot of starting experience and got his first look at full-time starting experience this past season, he actually played pretty well. I believe he gave up 1 sack after week 2 or 3. So in pass protection, he was pretty good. So I would say that with the 7th pick, if you keep it, you get a defensive player if you're not in love with the quarterbacks. But again, this is with the Aaron Rodgers trade on the table with my 3 conditions. It'll have to meet those 3 conditions for me to give up a first rounder because, as you said, and as I've said, the Raiders absolutely need the cheap draft capital because you can only spend so much in free agency without hindering yourself in the cap.
Right, and I think there's a lot of ifs there. I mean, you laid it out. I think the biggest one, to be frank with you, is the Derek Carr thing. I just don't think they're going to be able to swing a deal. Although we've heard some stuff over the last couple of days about the Jets and a couple pieces. Anton Staley, our guy up on Twitter, who writes there in New York, wrote about that a little bit too, in favor of going out and getting Derek Carr. So you don't know. We'll see. Again, you're going to start with Carr's deadline coming up. You would think that the Raiders would be panicked. And actually, no. Yes, they would love some draft capital back, Mo, but they get to walk away at $5 million, so they don't get hurt as long as they do it by the 15th. The other teams that might be interested in Derek Carr, and you've said this all along, to your credit, they might get nervous. If it's the Jets, if it's whoever it is, the Saints, whoever, they might get nervous and say, "Ooh, we're getting up to this 15th deadline. What does it look like? Do I go get him now, or do I wait? Is he going to be more expensive?" You don't know what's going to happen. So if somebody gets an itchy trigger finger, they could pull that trigger very quickly. Now, The key is, and the reason I don't think that ever happens, that the trade works, Mo, is this reason. That is, they can agree to a trade, but the trade does not become final until the league new year in the middle of March. And guess what happens? The team, let's say the Jets say, yeah, we want to trade for Derek Carr. March 14th, they could say, guess what? We changed our minds. And there's no repercussions. And then the Raiders are on the hook for $40 million.
That's the tricky thing. But if you're the Raiders, you're not worried about that, because if you don't agree to a trade, then you're going to cut them. And then what? You lose a quarterback. And I've said this from the beginning, that barring Derek Carr forcing his way out, I think there's going to be a trade-off on the table that the Raiders can accept. And Derek Carr is going to be like, I like that place. But if Derek Carr forcibly says, look, I'm not waiving my no trade clause because you guys didn't let me talk to other teams. So you played hardball, so I'm going to play hardball now.
Yeah.
Because in any regular circumstance, you don't just cut a quarterback, because quarterbacks have so much value.
Yeah.
The problem is that the Raiders hamstrung themselves by giving him that no trade clause and giving themselves that short deadline right after the Super Bowl. If the deadline was a little later, they would have a little more leeway, but they have to make a decision so quickly, and it's so far before free agency. It just puts them in a bind, and it makes things complicated. A lot of people were like, Mo, it's not complicated, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yes, it is complicated.
It is complicated.
You saw the report from Mike Garafolo, NFL Network. On one hand, the Raiders want to control the trade negotiations. They don't want Carr talking to other teams, because then he could talk to another team. That team goes, wink and a nod. Hey, we'll sign you in free agency. Just wait it out. Force your way out of Las Vegas. We'll sign you in free agency. Wink, wink. And the Raiders don't want that to happen. So that's why they're restricting it to teams that have agreed to trade compensation that Derek Carr can talk to. The problem is Derek Carr has to okay this. So in order for him to okay, he's probably going to want to be able to feel comfortable with that team and talk to the team's head coach, coordinator, position coaches. And if he's not allowed to do that, how can he feel comfortable stamping his approval on a trade? So it's like chicken or the egg, who blinks first?
Yeah, and we are just about a week away from that from the decision having to be made, and we don't know everything that's going on clearly, Mo, but I just don't see it happening. So we'll see what goes down. All I know is when it comes to the Raiders, I know fans will not want to hear this. But you're gonna have to take some lumps. You're gonna have to go a little bit more backwards. Now I know from 6-11, how do you go backwards? 2 games, maybe
13,
maybe. But you know what? With a Jarrett Stidham and a rookie quarterback learning, or maybe the rookie comes right in and starts. If it's CJ Stroud, I make the argument he might be able to come in and play right away. We'll see. But nonetheless, if you can get CJ Stroud, there's a lot of ifs there too. Don't get me wrong. But I would say this, that if you're a Raiders fan, all these years of losing, the reason that you have all these years of losing is because of these starts and stops of trying to put Band-Aids and to put your finger in the dam when it's leaking. And I think you got to do it the right way. You have to build a strong foundation. They don't have it on defense. They have it on offense. But Mo, I think about it from this perspective. If you go the young quarterback route, don't do the Aaron Rodgers deal. Then you say thank you, goodbye, wish you luck. If you can get Darren Waller, if you can trade Darren Waller, you trade him away. And you know what? I know people will go crazy over this, and I don't want to see it happen because I love watching the guy play. But even though he's got a restrictive contract, even Devontae Adams eventually. Listen, you got to stockpile picks. You look, and I've used them a couple times because I'm just more familiar with them in my backyard. The Cincinnati Bengals went from a terrible team to a Super Bowl in 2 years. So when you talk about a rebuild, it's not like it has to be a 5-year process. The Raiders' offense is not far away, okay? And the defense needs a lot of work. So within the period of 2 drafts, 2 free agent classes, the cap managed properly, hitting on your draft picks, within 2 to 3 years, the team can be a playoff team and be a team that's built to run deep into the playoffs, not one that's just made to go one and done.
Here's the thing, and I say this again, because they don't have the number 1 overall pick like the Bengals had, they're going to have to hit. Yeah. If they do draft the quarterback at number 7, they're going to have to hit on whoever that quarterback is.
Yeah.
Because if he's not a hit, and I know this is going to sound super crazy right now, but listen closely, okay? Raider fans, if you want some hope, just listen to me really quick. Just give me 2 minutes here, okay? If the Raiders draft the quarterback at 7 this year, let's say it's CJ Stroud. And let's say he doesn't look good, all right? and the Raiders go 3-14, 4-13, and they have a shot to get one of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft, I say swing again.
Absolutely.
If they have a shot at Cleveland, if the Raiders draft a quarterback and he stinks, whoever it is, and he absolutely stinks, and the Raiders get one of the top 2 picks in the 2024 draft, and Cleve Williams is out, May out of North Carolina is out, why not swing again? Swing again at the quarterback position, and then trade one of them for some draft capital. If you stink, then it puts you in the sweepstakes for the next year's top quarterbacks, and I don't think that's a terrible thing.
No, and look at now. You can make the argument that they got a little better, but not all the way better. It's what the Cardinals did with Josh Rosen, right? They took Josh Rosen, and the very next year they took Kyler Murray.
Yep.
And so there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you don't hit, listen, I like Stroud. I think he's going to be a good pro quarterback. I don't know if he's a good pro quarterback the first year, right? I don't know that. But I will say that it's worth the risk in the NFL today. Yes, you got to build the defense. But again, moving up to get Stroud, as I said in the piece today, Mo, you might have to, I still think to secure it, you'd probably have to go to 3. Some people argue you'd have to go to 1. I doubt it. I think Bryce Young, barring some weird circumstance at pro days, I don't think Bryce Young is out of that number 1 spot. I think somebody's going to trade up to get that number 1 spot with the Bears and give up a lot to do it. And then I think Levis might go before that too. Right, number 3, if you get up to number 3, you can definitely get CJ Stroud. So the Raiders might have to do that, but you swap a 3 and a 7 and you give somebody else, I don't know, a 2 next year, something like that. Yeah, you're giving away draft capital. But if you're going to struggle with a rookie quarterback next year, then like you said, you're going to get more draft capital. It's going to be higher draft capital and you can continue to build.
I'm just saying being in the Khalid Williams, Drake May sweepstakes isn't such a bad thing.
Exactly.
If you feel like you whiffed this year on this year's quarterbacks. Now people say that's wasting draft capital because you could have got a defensive player on offensive tackle, and I get that. But the name of the game here is you got to get the quarterback position right.
Yeah.
For Devontae Adams' sake, for Darren Waller's sake, if you're going to keep him, Hunter Renfro's sake, if you don't want to waste those guys in their primes, you have to get the quarterback position straight. And once you get that straight, you can not once, you can do both at the same time, as we've said.
Yeah.
Now you can make a trade for draft capital, get a player, trade off a player and get more draft capital. If you waste a pick on a quarterback that you wind up seeing that he's not that guy, there's always trade. You can always pull off a trade. You have quality players that you could trade away. Now, fans don't want to hear that because this is kind of what Gruden did when he got there. It's kind of the opposite of what's happening now. Gruden got there and he kind of like, okay, we're gonna trade our quality players. We're gonna get a bunch of draft picks and rebuild this from the ground up. I would say that the way the Raiders are doing it right now, with Aaron Rodgers out there, is a good approach because who knows, maybe they swing a trade. But if it doesn't work out, where they don't get Aaron Rodgers, and you're spinning your wheels on rookie quarterbacks, then you might say, okay, these guys are not getting younger. We don't have the quarterback position figured out. What can we get for a Darren Waller? What can we get for Hunter Renfrow?
Yeah, and I think this, I'll close out the segment with this too, Mo, is when you're talking about the scenarios, if they sign Aaron Rodgers, then in the first round, you get that defensive player at 7. You might even be able to trade down, get some more picks, and still get the defensive player. Defensive players go deep into the second round. Impact players, by the way. Mm-hmm. So you can go deep into the second round. You could move down a spot, maybe get another second round pick to get somebody who wants to get into the top 10 and get a quarterback. If you're not in love with the quarterbacks, or if you sign Rodgers or traded for Rodgers, then you do that. Even if you do get a rookie quarterback, I think there's an opportunity for them to do it. There's all sorts of trade options out there. We talked about Waller. There's other options as well when you look at some of the folks on the Raiders and what they're able to do. So we'll see. It'll be interesting, though. This is just the beginning of this, and now you have a dose for what we're going to be doing in February and March as we lead up to the NFL draft. But when we come back from this break, we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers. Is he really on the trade block? Is that what the Packers want to do? Are they ready to move on to Jordan Love? Do they have Aaron Rodgers fatigue in Green Bay? We'll find out as the great columnist Pete Doherty from the Green Bay Press-Gazette joins us here with Moe and Scott on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Original Podcast. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Original Podcast. Also listening to us on 98.5 The Fan and 1140 The Bet in Las Vegas. So we talked about Aaron Rodgers in the first segment. So we decided, you know what? Why not go to somebody who knows the situation much better than we do? So we're going to go out to Green Bay now and bring in Pete Doherty. He is a columnist covering the Packers at the Green Bay Press-Gazette. And Pete, the chatter with Aaron Rodgers, it's a yearly thing. And I don't know if there's fatigue in Green Bay over what Aaron Rodgers is going to do, the retirement, all this. Now it's turned to trade speculation. There was some 49er rumors. Of course, he shot those down over the weekend. The Raiders are now coming up. Devontae Adams, his former teammate, is tweeting out all kinds of funny stuff, which I think is all pretty much joke and tongue-in-cheek. But nonetheless, it's brought up a lot of opportunity and a lot of conversation around Aaron Rodgers perhaps stopping in Las Vegas. Where are we from your perception and you covering the team? Are the Packers indeed going to trade him? What are the chances, and what does your gut tell you at this point about the team moving on and maybe turning over the reins to Jordan Love?
Yeah, I guess where we are is, one, Rodgers is supposedly deciding, whether he's going to play. I find the likelihood of his retiring to be, zero. I mean, I just can't imagine. No matter what he says, I can't imagine him walking away from $59 million. That's all he has to do is show up. It's guaranteed. So I just, that's not happening. So then is it here or is it with another team? The Packers have say in this. What they do could have some sway with Rodgers. They might tell him they want him back, but they might make some personnel moves or tell him of personnel moves they're going to do as far as moving on from some veterans, and he might take that as a sign because he said he doesn't want to take part in a rebuild. So he could take that as a sign of, that the Packers are rebuilding instead of reloading, is the way he put it. So then he might ask for a trade, or the Packers might have decided that they want to move on and give Jordan Love his crack at it, and then they'll tell him that whenever he when he lets them know for sure that he's playing. As far as what's going to happen, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, really, if I just absolutely had to make a guess, I'm guessing that they trade him, but other people, colleagues of mine, think the opposite. And we're all just making wild guesses. I might be guessing that because that's what I think they should do. So maybe I'm just imposing myself on that. So I don't know. But it'll be, the decision's probably going to come down in the next, maybe 2 weeks at the earliest. And, but for sure before free agency starts, I find it hard to believe that they would let this, move past that. I mean, I guess there's always a chance it could go up until before the draft, but
right.
What they do here and what any team wanting to acquire him, that it could affect what else they do in the offseason. So the sooner the better, I think, for all parties.
Hey, Pete, it's Mo jumping in. Sorry to just hop in on you, but putting your GM hat on, you said you think they were going to trade Aaron Rodgers if you had to take a guess right now. And I just wanted to ask, what do you think it would take to acquire Aaron Rodgers? Because there are a lot of Raider fans out there who believe it wouldn't take much. I'm of the belief that you're going to have to give up at least a one for a guy who's won 4 league MVPs and says he could still play at a high level. There are Raider fans out there who say, well, we can give up a middle round pick. And I'm just like, wait, stop. It's going to take a lot more than that.
Yeah, and that'll depend on how many teams are in the bidding. The more bidders, the more actually all he needs 2 if they both really want him. I went into this last week. I called 4 scouts who I really, I've had a long relationship with, really respect their opinions. And I went into it thinking, maybe they'd get 2 2s, a 2 and a 3, something like that. All 4 of them said at least a 1. 3 of them said they ranged anywhere from a 1 and a 2 to a 1 and a 4. So I'm guessing these guys know what they're talking about, and they're probably a lot more in the ballpark than I was going in.
Again, Pete Doherty from the Green Bay Press-Gazette is our guest. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers. And you look at Aaron Rodgers now. Let's give fans and our listeners in Las Vegas sort of the assessment of where he's at. I mean, he's 40 years old. We just saw Tom Brady step aside at 46 years old. Aaron Rodgers coming off a year. I know that the Packers didn't have the best year. He didn't have a lot of tools there or didn't have enough tools, depending which argument you take. But when you look at a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, what is he now versus what he was 2, 3, 4 years ago?
He doesn't look like the player that he was even a couple of years ago to me. He still throws the ball really well. His arm is as good as ever. He can throw all the different angles, all that stuff. He's obviously, smart, really smart, and he's even more experienced now every year you add to that. The thing that really made him special all those years was his ability to make plays outside the pocket. He'd get outside the pocket and he could throw the ball right on the money, going left, going right. That was clearly what set him apart from all his peers. He doesn't, because of his age, he's just not as mobile as he was. He can still do it. He still gets outside the pocket and make plays. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but he just can't do it on command like he used to. He can't carry the team like he used to. He could still, if he returned to the Packers, my guess is because once Christian Watson got over all his injury problems, their offense was a lot better the second half of the season. If he comes back, I'm sure they'll win 10 games, maybe 11. I still think something will be missing. So I think he's got to be surrounded to be a championship threat, he's got to be surrounded by a little better personnel than he's probably going to be here this upcoming season. That's one of the reasons why I think the Packers would just be spinning their wheels if they stuck with him.
So Pete, I know this is mostly about Aaron Rodgers, but let's play the scenario if the Packers keep Aaron Rodgers. Would you say then that means Jordan Love would ask for his way out, or would they consider trading Jordan Love, or is it you keep both of them, have Aaron Rodgers for 1 year, and then you have Jordan Love on that 5th year option?
Yeah. So, Mo, I have trouble seeing them. Everything I've heard is, they're not letting Love leave. And yes, Love could ask for a trade. He really doesn't have much leverage. The only leverage he would have is, he can't not show up. The fines, at that new CBA they did a couple of years ago, the fines are prohibitive. You start missing camp days, and it's just, the fines you'd pay there's no way it's worth it. He could do a hold in where he shows up and says he's hurt and doesn't play, and that could be a problem and a distraction. And, you don't need your locker room problems like that. Would he actually do that? That's a big step. And I don't know if he would or not. Most guys won't do it, but some will. 2, I'm thinking that if the Packers like him as much as they say it, as much as it appears just hearing through the grapevine, that they'll work out something with him contractually, maybe even this offseason, just to appease him and to let him know that he's going to be the guy, like you said, when the 5th year option kicks in, which everything I've heard is they're either going to exercise that or they'll have some kind of new contract in place for it.
Pete, also let me ask you this, because I know just like Raider fans are so loyal, Raider Nation's so loyal, and you have the cheeseheads out there in Green Bay. So where are fans with Aaron Rodgers right now? What is the sentiment? Because I know every year you kind of go on this Aaron Rodgers watch. Is he going to come back? Is he going to retire? All this sort of stuff. He's also obviously gotten a lot more outspoken on certain things, his spots on the McAfee show that he does. What's the overall pulse of the fan base there and what they think of Aaron Rodgers? Would they be very, very upset if he left, or is it kind of reached a point where people are at an impasse and kind of like, well, if he goes, he goes. If he stays, he stays?
So there hasn't been any, like Gallup poll or anything like that on this, but I've tried to, kind of get a feel for what you're saying. I do weekly internet chats where readers can submit questions. So going by the tone of those, going by the tone of what I see on Twitter, I always ask, acquaintances, if I haven't seen anybody for, a few weeks or a month or whatever, I'll ask them, what do you think? What would you do? What do you want the Packers to do? I'm getting the sense this is a lot different than when they moved on from Favre in 2008. And I get the sense that it's maybe 60-40 that people are ready to move on. That should, I'm just kind of making this up, but just going by, feel of these things. I'm guessing it's about 60-40 that people would prefer to move on. I think going 8-9 last season has a lot to do with it. And, a lot of fans see an older player who they think who's in decline. Some of the other things you mentioned, the McAfee, his lying about his COVID status and all of that. I think that eroded his fan base a little bit. All those things kind of add into it. So that's just the sentiment I get is, maybe 60-40 Packers fans are ready to move on.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, sort of the similarities. I mean, obviously very different players with very different resumes, but Raider fans, much the same way with Derek Carr, who's a younger quarterback, obviously not as accomplished, hasn't won like Aaron Rodgers or gotten the MVPs, all those awards, but a very similar situation in Las Vegas, and Derek Carr is going to be moving on as well. Do you think the Packers go, and are they going to also, if they trade Aaron Rodgers, is it going to be Jordan Love without a doubt, or do you feel like they're going to bring somebody in there too to compete with him?
Last year, if they had done it, I'm thinking like a Vegas trade would have made a lot of sense, and getting Carr would have made a lot of sense. This year, I'm thinking they've got to see Jordan Love play. Now, he played the fourth quarter of a game at Philadelphia. I think it was about halfway through the year, maybe a little more. And he played well. He looked good, like way better than he had at any point before. He looked poised and comfortable. He looked better in the preseason than he had in the previous regular season and preseason, but he looked better in this game than he did in preseason. And they've been seeing him in practice every day, so they've got to have a decent feel for him. So unless they're bluffing everybody, which is always a possibility, I think they've got 3 years of sitting. That's getting pretty far. I can see it happen with Rodgers. He sat 3 years, but you don't, going any farther than that. If they make the trade, there would be no reason not to play him. I mean, if he's not ready now for a look, then he's never going to be. If they made a trade with Las Vegas and acquired Carr, well, for one thing, that contract would be prohibitive. But
Yeah.
A guy like him, that would be a sign that they do not think Love can do it, which everything I've heard is they think he's got a chance.
That's great. Pete Doherty from the Green Bay Press-Gazette. Pete, thank you again for doing it, man. We'll catch up with you if anything happens down with these two teams.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right.
Appreciate
Thanks. There you go. The great Pete Doherty spending some time with us here from Green Bay. We certainly appreciate that. And just good insight there, Moa. Whether or not this happens, the Aaron Rodgers watch happens in Green Bay every year. Now it's happening. Folks in Las Vegas seen a lot of fans getting excited about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers. But we'll have to wait and see. But we could, as Pete said, we might know here within the next couple of weeks.
It's pretty good that he confirmed my thought, because I thought I was losing my mind when I saw Raider fans saying, yeah, we give up a third and a fifth rounder, we can get Aaron Rodgers. And I'm like, are we talking about the same Aaron Rodgers that, not too long ago won back-to-back league MVPs? I understand the Packers didn't make the playoffs and they went 9-8, just missed the cut.
Yeah.
But Aaron Rodgers is still regarded as one of the top, 10 quarterbacks in the league. You're not giving up. If you offer a third and a fifth round pick for Aaron Rodgers, the Packers are going to pick up the phone, laugh at you, and hang up the phone because that's not going to be nearly enough to get him, even with his contract. Because as he said, if the Jets are in the bidding war for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets are willing to outbid, unless Aaron Rodgers says, I don't want to go to New York, the Packers are going to pick the best offer on the table.
Of course they are. Yeah, no question. And by the way, I think the Raider fans are confusing what it would take to get Aaron Rodgers for what the Raiders might take for Derek Carr.
That compensation, a third rounder, is closer to what Derek Carr's trade comp is than Aaron Rodgers, despite the disparity in age. Aaron Rodgers being 39 and Derek Carr being 31 years old. Yes,
absolutely. But again, like I said in the first segment, I don't think they should get Aaron Rodgers, but that's just me. You can read about it today on sportsnot.com, by the way. Anyway, shameless plug. All right, we're going to step aside for our final break. When we come back, we're going to close out the show. We're going to talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl. I know the Pro Bowl. I know. Josh Jacobs had some choice words, 4-letter words about the Pro Bowl. We're going to talk about that too when we come back, as well as some hodgepodge stuff. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Moe and Scott. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. Welcome back, home stretch here on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. Do us a favor, if you don't already subscribe to it, make sure you do wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Silver and Black Today, click subscribe, and make sure you put on auto download. That way, every time a new episode comes out, you will get it. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much. Hit subscribe and the notifications bell there. Always a lively chat happening right over there on the other side of Moe's mug. And we're talking to people over there inside the chat all the time as well. So thanks to all of you. And also a shout out to our listeners on 98.5 The Fan and 1140 The Bet in Las Vegas. Moe Moten, he's a national NFL writer for Bleacher Report, covering the entire league. And he also writes about the Raiders up on sportsnaut.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Moe Moton. That's Moe with an E, Moemoton. You can follow me at LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. Okay, Mo, the Pro Bowl. We made fun of the Pro Bowl, the old Pro Bowl, when they actually played a game where nobody played defense and they kind of pushed each other over instead of tackling. And this new format that they brought to Las Vegas, I saw most media members really harsh on it, talking about how bad it was, talking about this, talking about that. It's terrible, especially a lot of media members who actually weren't there, but were covering it from afar, which is totally fine. But I will tell you this, I'm going to defend it. Now, you can take the other side of the argument if you want, but I said this to you last week. This format is great for families, for fans to get a nice trip out to Las Vegas. It's not a bad trip, especially during the wintertime, where you get to meet and greet and hang out, get autographs with these players who are doing all sorts of things. They're throwing at paper targets, which apparently makes you an MVP now. They're pushing sleds. They're doing all kinds. They're playing dodgeball, which I thought was actually pretty hysterical. They're playing flag football. To me, this event, because the NFL Players Association long ago wants to protect players, so nobody's going to go to the Pro Bowl and actually play a football game and get hurt. There's too much money on the line, and the league doesn't want it. So they've gone to this format, and then I see the media just blasting it. Now, here I will say this. This is where one of the times I put on my fan hat, okay? Shut up. It's not for the media. I understand it would be boring to cover as a member of the media. I'm not saying I'd like to cover it, because it's not really anything except getting sound bites from guys, right? Other than that, it's a bore for the media. But it's not about you guys. It's about the fans. It's about the little kid, most of which can't afford to go to a football game anymore, to go out and see their favorite players. Mo, I thought it was sort of exciting. Did I watch a lot of it? No. But if I was still in Las Vegas and I had my kids, I would have definitely taken them to events.
I'm going to say this. I didn't watch 1 minute of it. I saw clips of it on social media, you know, some of the things that happened. But I agree with you. And I think Vinny Bonsignor of the Las Vegas Review-Journal also said this. He said, sometimes we get too much into our own lanes and we don't see how things are important to others.
Right.
And I think he made the same point that you made, that this event is a fan event. It's for kids and families. It's not for media. You're not there breaking down drag routes and cover three covered packages and nickel packages and base formation. You're not doing any of that. So there's nothing for you to have hardcore football opinions about other than the quotes that the players give you. And there were plenty of good, pretty funny quotes coming out of the Pro Bowl activity,
sure,
Pro Bowl weekend. But as far as the event is concerned, it's just a big, I forgot who said this. Shout me out whoever said this on Twitter, but someone said it's just a big picnic. Yeah. It's a big football picnic for where people just go and have fun. Nothing serious going on. As you said, you get to see your favorite players, sign autographs and cool games, like a carnival. It's like a football carnival almost. And I think that's the point of it, is that to give something back to the fans for them to enjoy. It's not for media members to get, again, hardcore quotes down for their stories and to run something on the internet. It's for the fans.
Yeah, and I thought overall, I watched it in pieces. I watched a little bit of the competition. And so for those of us older than most of you, there used to be a thing called the Battle of the Network Stars. It was a TV thing where celebrities, mostly from television and movies, did like obstacle course stuff, you know, climbing the walls, the steeplechase, jumping over the water, some racing, some dunk tank, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was just fun. It was a way to see the celebrity outside their normal role. And that's what I think the NFL was trying to do here. Now, the one criticism I had for the NFL viewing from afar was I could tell, because I lived in Las Vegas for so long, it was all over the city, right? So it was not in one location. They had events at the Raiders training facility over in Henderson. They had stuff at the stadium. They had stuff outside, different parts of town. I would consolidate that and make it more accessible that way. But what I did see was, to your point, and I'm going to specifically focus on Raider Nation. A lot of our listeners from the West Coast brought their kids out there, or they went by themselves, and it was just a great way to say goodbye to the season, to say goodbye to their friends, to see some of their favorite players in a completely relaxed environment. You're not worried about your team winning. You're not stressed out. It's not about that. It's just about enjoying football, enjoying the personalities, and enjoying your friend's family. And to me, that was a winner. That's why, and I've always said I've been very impressed with Josh Jacobs as a young man. But his comments, he was asked about it, and he said it was stupid and S-H-I, you know what I'm saying, right? So we try to keep this family oriented so we don't have to put an explicit lyric on it. But Josh Jacobs basically called it crap. And one of the other players, I think he was the long snapper for the Bills, and I forget his name now, called Josh Jacobs out and said, hey, man, you got a check for going to the Pro Bowl. And it's not about you, to the same point you made about what I said and what Vinny said. It's about the fans. And guess what? You could have not gone. You could have said no. If you thought it was stupid, you didn't have to go. And I think, again, just like journalists sometimes forget it's not about them, these players, I understand, it's an honor to be named, and he deserved it. Obviously, Josh Jacobs had a great year. But remember, there's kids there who will never be able to afford to see you, but they got to come see you there, and for them, that might be the excitement of their year.
I think if you put it to Josh Jacobs that way, because Josh Jacobs has been,
He's
pretty
a great
much
guy.
a good guy. So I think if you put it to him that way, he would agree with you. Not to defend him, but I'm just saying he's probably answering it from his perspective.
Correct.
And I could see why he's like, oh, this is a waste of time because, I'm not out here to just, I don't want to say have small talk with fans, but I'm not out here to just lollygag. I think he said he'd rather it be a vacation for his family. So again, he's thinking about it from his perspective. He's not thinking about it from a big picture and what it means to the fan base. He's thinking about it for himself. How would it make it better for the players? And he's probably saying for the players, give them a vacation. But I do understand that if you were to pose it to him, well, if you look at it from a big picture, what would you think of it? Like fans get to see you and it's affordable and people can bring their families and all the other festivities. I think he would understand it, be like, well, it's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think too that the old format, going back now 10 years, when it was in Hawaii every year, I thought players, even if they didn't tackle and play defense and all that, they enjoyed that too, because they could actually, season was over. Yeah, you're going to play a little football. You have activities you got to do as part of the game, but you take your family to Hawaii, right? So it was kind of, now Vegas is a good vacation spot too, but it ain't Hawaii. Okay. So I get that from his perspective, and I'm not holding it against Josh Jacobs. I was just surprised by it because he's such a well-spoken dude usually. And I think he just was, it was a casual environment, and he just kind of, oh man, this is stupid. Now he did play dodgeball, and I think maybe he was upset because he didn't play dodgeball as well as he played football.
I think it's sometimes and I'm not saying you're doing this or we do this. I think sometimes we expect players to say the right thing every time.
All the time.
Someone puts a mic in their face. And we have to remember that these players, they're football players. They're not PR agents or people who speak in front of a microphone every day. Yeah. So sometimes when you put a microphone in the face, you're going to get the raw answer, whether it's sanitized or not. You're going to get what he really thinks. And one thing I can appreciate about Josh Jacobs is that he's going to tell you exactly what's on his mind, whether it's the PC thing to say or not. He's going to tell you exactly what he's thinking, and that's what he did when he was interviewed for that.
It's a great point. I mean, our last two presidents didn't speak very well. So can you imagine? We've had two presidents in a row who kind of were loopy when they talk, and for different reasons, but nonetheless. So to see a player, it's a great point, Mo. The other thing that sticks out, and a lot of news around the Raiders, was the Pro Bowl was Derek Carr. A lot of fans, he's wearing an NFL hat, but meanwhile he had a Raiders logo on his shirt. All this kind of stuff, people basically on both sides of the argument still entrenched in the Carr wars. And as you tweeted out this past week, even after he's on a new team, there's going to be some semblance of a Carr wars in Raider Nation just because people can't give in and give up. But Derek Carr got to say his goodbye to fans, and he got a nice ovation. I know a lot of fans, including our longtime listener, Just Win Wendy, was there in her Carr jersey to say goodbye. They felt like they had some closure there, which was great for the fans. I do that as well. And of course, the people who didn't like Derek Carr were happy to watch him in the flag football game throw an interception at the end of the game. So everybody was happy. So that's, again, another reason why the Pro Bowl worked.
I will say this. The funny thing about this is, number one, the whole Carr thing about, when is Carr Wars going to end? Is Carr Wars going to be over once he's gone? I remember when I first started covering the Raiders, and this is back in 2014. and 15, right? They would still talk about Terrell Pryor and Carson Palmer, right? And those guys weren't with the Rays for nearly as long as Derek Carr was. So you can imagine if you were still talking about Carson Palmer and Terrell Pryor after the Rays moved on from them, you can imagine that there are going to be lingering conversations about Derek Carr, especially because he's still going to be starting in the league for another team. And they're going to be fans that say, see, we shouldn't have got rid of him. Look how good he's playing. Or there's going to be fans that saying, see, good thing we got rid of him because look how he hasn't improved his play on a better roster. Yeah. So either way, they're going to compare him to whoever the Raiders have at quarterback now and saying, okay, right or wrong, McDaniels is right or wrong for getting rid of him.
So you're saying he's going to start somewhere?
He's definitely. Yes, he's definitely.
I'm playing with you because somebody out there is going to say the same thing.
He's not a starter. He's a bum. I know.
I'm just making your point for you in a funny way.
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting and then there'll be something else. We live in this age, and vast majority of Raider fans are awesome people. They just want to talk about their team. Yeah, they get frustrated sometimes and they vent. But most people are not like this. They're both sides of the same coin that doesn't represent the majority of Raider Nation. But it'll be something else. So if Aaron Rodgers comes and doesn't have 90 touchdowns and only one interception, it's going to be a bad move. If they draft C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Bryce Young, whoever it is, that guy sucks. See, we should have never done it. We should have drafted a defensive player. So there's always the counter argument because people don't want to be patient or they expect perfection out of everything. It's something you talked about just a moment ago about expecting our athletes and football players and sports stars to speak eloquently and perfectly every time they're in front of a microphone. The same can be said for their play too, right? You look at some of these players who took time to develop. You look at Jalen Hurts is the best example right now of the NFL. Look, no one thought that kid was going to make it. No one. I mean, even in Philadelphia, they were like, what the hell are they doing? I mean, you can go back and look at some of those headlines. But they waited, they were patient, and it happened. And so, yes, Raider Nation can say, we've been waiting for 2 decades to win, but the reality is it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. All you can do is look forward, and it's unfortunate, but this is part of sports fandom today. Social media has brought this about, and it's not going to go anywhere soon, my friend.
Yeah, if you're out there and you don't want to take part in the car wars, then just ignore it. You can do whatever you can put it on your band car and your band words, whatever. You can scroll past it. I tell people this all the time. Whatever you don't want, ignore it because then you'll get less of it. But if you give something that you don't like more attention, you're going to get more of that. So if you get on a bunch of car threads and go, I hate car wars, you just put yourself in the middle of a thread of car wars. That's something you don't want. If that's not what you want to read or see, then just scroll past it. As
I'm learning, as I stump for the Raiders drafting C.J. Stroud, I'm getting Michigan fans telling me how he sucks. And I'm like, dude, it's because you're a Michigan fan.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So I get that. But yeah, that's just how it is. And it's hard sometimes. And Mo, I always text you about this one. I got sucked in again. Because I get sucked in. You're much better about it than I am. I get sucked in occasionally. But that's it. Yeah, you have to protect your peace, as they say. And I think that's the same when it comes to social media and arguing about your team.
So I give people 2 tweets. I give people 2 tweets. 2 responses. After the 2 responses, I don't care what you say after that, unless you're saying, hey, Mo, I'm cash apping you $1 million. I have nothing to say to you after that. I am not arguing with people on Twitter.
But see, that's happened to me before, and then I've had people like you come and tell me, hey, this dude said you blocked him. He's a good dude. I'm like, well, he must have said something idiotic to me. I don't know what to tell you.
So do you hear that? Now, for Raider fans listening, you hear that? I'm trying to help you guys out. The people who get blocked by Scott, I try to put in a good word for you, but if you're continuously a douchebag, there's nothing I can do.
No.
All right. I try to talk Scott into letting go of the block button.
I don't block that many people. I tend to mute people because it's like they're in an empty room yelling at me. So I can't hear them. So it doesn't matter, right? So if you mute somebody, you don't have to deal with it. Now they can respond to certain tweets and you might see their stuff, but that's what I do because you do. I remember I defended Derek Carr last year when he was blocking somebody and people were complaining about him blocking people, or he said something in the public about it. I was like, no, I defended him. Like, look, why do you, if people are going to attack you and tell you that you're a piece of crap, why would you want to listen to them? Now, if somebody wants to tell you, hey, you said this on your show and you were wrong because of A, B, and C, and I was wrong, great, then I'll admit it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these people who go above and beyond. Now, I make mistakes sometimes. Sometimes people get a heated debate and they lose it for a minute and they're good people. That happens to all of us.
I just look. If you're out there and if you know how I go about my Twitter, I used to rarely block people as well. I barely block. I block more now simply because sometimes people just are consistent or persistent with it. Like every day they're on you about something over and over again. It's like you just don't want to hear it. So you just block them and it's done. Right?
Yeah.
So far I haven't had anyone say, hey, you blocked me and I should have been blocked. So anyone who I blocked probably deserved it.
Yeah. That's what I think too, but then you tell me I'm wrong.
I mean, sometimes it's weird because sometimes
we make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
No, but sometimes the people that you block are very, I guess, level-headed with me, and then for whatever reason they got sideways with you, and they're like, "Hey, your co-host he blocked me. Why is he acting like this?" And I'm like, "Look, I can't say anything. He's his own person. If he blocked you, he must have had a reason for it. But that's not me. I'm gonna let you guys
just
iron
say
that
he's
out.
old and crotchety. Just
I never say that.
Just say he's much older.
I'd never say that about my co-host. But I will say
he's older. He's got kids. His temper is a little shorter.
Sometimes we get on social media and sometimes we just have a shorter fuse than other days. Like you can get up sometimes. We're all human, right? So we all have bad days. We all get up where sometimes we're a little cranky or grumpy and we're just in a zero tolerance mode. Like if anybody says something crazy to me, I'm just gonna block them. And there are some days where you just have a lot of patience. This is what it is.
Well, there's this concept that they call holy moments, right? And it basically every day you have an opportunity because every moment you can make it a holy moment or you can make it an unholy moment. And I'm not referring to the travesty we saw on the Grammys, but what I'm saying is every day you have a moment. Somebody could come at you with some nastiness, right? And you can decide what kind of moment am I going to make it? Am I going to make it a positive one? Am I going to make it a negative one? We all decide. And some days, to your point, we're not in a good mood. Something's happened. Something's bothering us. So we choose the negative, right? But in reality, if we did the positive more often, and I do try to do, people come at me sometimes. I'm like, hey, man, you can disagree, but no reason to get upset about it, okay? I'm totally cool if you disagree. We don't have to agree on something. And I find a lot of times when you do that, people, they realize what they're doing, that they're kind of, whoa, out of control when you treat them with kindness instead of with fire. And suddenly it kind of turns the conversation. And I've met a lot of people online that way who I now have great correspondence with over. So I need to take my own advice at times, but nonetheless, just something for you guys to think about, especially with Derek Carr.
So to tie this all in, once Derek Carr is either traded or cut, and you want to yell at me or Scott, it's all cool. If you disagree with what we said or we were wrong about something, it's all good. 'Cause it's coming down the pipeline in about 7-8 days.
Oh, it's gonna happen. It's happened, and we're gonna cover it wall to wall. For one last time, we'll play Old Lang Syne at the end. I will say this though too. I'm going to share this one experience in closing, which was I had somebody, and this was just on Monday. I think you saw it, Mo. I had a guy argue with me that the Jets are not as good as the Raiders as an opportunity for Aaron Rodgers. And the Jets weren't very good. They have no offense. I said, no, they have an offense. They just have no quarterback. They have a top 3 defense. And if you have a top 3 defense, you could have a 15th offense and still be a really good team. So that's the one thing I'm going to say is, and every once in a while I will say something like I know it and I realize I don't know as much as I've done and somebody will call me on it. They always do. And it's great because it catches me. And I say, you know what? You're right. I was wrong about that. Let me check in or let me learn more about it before I comment. That's what I would say to fans, Raider fans out there. If you don't watch a lot of football outside of your team, which is totally fine. I'm not telling you have to, but to say a team is bad when you never watch them because you see 2 minutes of highlights on Sunday or you look at their record, doesn't necessarily mean to do it. I think we owe it to each other. For football fans, we're covering football. Know a little bit, and if you don't know it, it's okay. Say, hey, why do you think ask me, why do you think the Jets? I didn't think the Jets were very good. They didn't make the playoffs. Well, okay, let me tell you why they're very good. So anyway, just some advice out there. We can all help each other learn more and get along better. So there's my thing. I know it'll go on deaf ears, but I'm going to say it anyway.
I think a little bit of that is fan allegiance too, though. Like
That's true, too.
Most fans are not going to admit that a team has better pieces than their team. Like they're always going to say, "Well, my team's got this." Remember, a lot of fans will inflate the value of certain players on their team when they say, "This player is really good."
Yeah.
And I just want to use this as an example. I know people are going to come at me for this, but the whole Colton Miller thing, right?
Yeah.
I think Colton Miller is a B+ offensive tackle.
Yeah.
There are some fans that think Colton Miller is an all-pro tackle. I wouldn't go that far. I think Colton Miller is a really good tackle. I'm not saying he's a bad tackle, mediocre. I'm just saying that Colton Miller is really good, not great. Now, again, there are fans that go, "What are you talking about, Mo? He's only allowed this many sacks and pressures, and he should be an all-pro, Pro Bowler." I think he's on that borderline where he's like, could be a Pro Bowler, like right there. But I don't think he's as good as some fans think he is. Because there are some games where he's playing against top-tier edge rushers, and he gets crushed out there. And I'm not picking on him and cherry picking on certain games, but I see it with Chargers games. For some reason, Colton Miller does not play well against the Chargers. I don't know
isn't
what
that
it is,
interesting?
but he doesn't play well against the Chargers.
Mhm.
And there were other games where I saw he was going against top-tier edge rushers, and he just didn't measure up. Now, against the lower-tier edge rushers, fine, pretty good. But he has his moments where he doesn't look quite like a Pro Buzz some fans think he is. That's my rant for today.
And there's nothing wrong with defending and to your point about players on your team, but there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I get some of the hated rivals. Okay, the Chargers.
Yeah.
Okay, the Broncos, the Chiefs. But look, you can hate the Chiefs, and I had a bunch of fans tell me this the other day, actually, online. You can hate the Chiefs, but if you want to deny that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, then you're not being honest. Sorry, I know it's a Raiders show. I'm just going to tell you because he is. Now, well, he's only won one Super Bowl. Okay, well, that doesn't matter. I mean, look, rings matter, but at the same time, you have to look at his play, and you have to look at what he does. His team has been in 5 consecutive. Well, he's only won 2 of those or 3. Oh, it doesn't matter. He's been there, right? He's putting his team in a position to win. He can't control all of it, but you got your so just you can say, hey, I hate the effing Chiefs. I hate Patrick Mahomes. Like I always say, I said it last show. I hate the Yankees, but I respect them because they find a way to do it. At least they have in the past. So, and when I will root against them, and I hope they lose, and I hope they lose 10-0 every game of the year. But if they win the World Series, now the only team I won't give any credit to is the Dodgers, but that's beside the point.
You're just racking up a lot of hate mail today.
I know. I'm just kidding. Well, the baseball season is going to get going. But anyway, all right, Mo. Well, that's it. We're going to get Thursday. We'll see what else is going on in the news. Maybe there'll be a Derek Carr trade by Thursday. You never know. We do need to talk. I know we talked about it last week, but the whole situation with Josh Jacobs and the tag. Josh Jacobs said at the Pro Bowl, I don't want the tag. No player wants the tag. So people making a big deal out of that is to me just nothing. But it appears to me, especially depending on what the Raiders do at quarterback, if they get an Aaron Rodgers or somebody like that, then he's definitely tagged. If they don't and they go rookie quarterback, then maybe there's a possibility they sign him to a contract. But we'll get into that and any other news that's popping up. We'll also take our look at the Super Bowl, the Chiefs, and of course the Eagles in the game. We've already talked about a little bit who we think is going to win, but we'll get some more into that as we go through Super Bowl week. It'll be a fun week, Mo. I know you're going to have a lot of work to do at Bleacher Report. What do you got coming on SportsNot as it concerns the Raiders?
As far as it concerns the Raiders, I'm going to actually look at, after our interview with Mr. Dougherty, I'm going to look at Aaron Rodgers' trade value from my perspective, what I think a trade would look like between the Raiders and the Packers if the Packers were okay a trade. I know a lot of Raider fans, based on what I said today, are going to be disappointed and say, no, we don't want that trade because it's too much, but I'm going to give you my opinion on that anyway. And I may take a spin and look at free agency. I'm actually going to do something special for free agency this year because the Raiders need a lot of help. So there are going to be a lot of targets for the Raiders for free agency. So I'm going to do something different this year, and I'm going to get started on that. And then right after that, I'm going to get into looking at quarterbacks. Unless an Aaron Rodgers deal goes down, I'm going to do a deep dive on the quarterbacks that the Raiders could draft number 7 overall or in the first round period.
Yes, and we're going to over the next several weeks, we're going to get all into that free agents, the draft, of course. We're also working to solidify a date with TJ O'Sullivan from the quarterback school. If you saw on Monday, I tweeted out his breakdown of CJ Stroud. Of course, he's a former NFL quarterback, played for the 49ers, but before you say anything, he also played for the Raiders. He's a former Raider. Once a Raider, always a Raider. But he'll join us from San Diego. Just got to get a date solidified there. We'll have him go through the young quarterbacks and with his knowledge of NFL systems and Josh McDaniels system, sort of talk about fits there. So we got a lot of great stuff coming up on the show. Don't tell us it's the offseason because we're continuing to bring the A game that Mo and I know. Also, in addition to Mo's story coming up, again, my piece on Sportsnaut on why the Raiders should not trade for Aaron Rodgers and instead focus on how the heck they get CJ Stroud. You can check that up on Sportsnaut. I'll tweet it out as well at LV Gully. Follow Mo on Twitter, MoeMoton. Look for the big new single from a band that's unnamed yet called Midtown Mo. If you don't know what Midtown Mo is, go back a couple episodes and you'll learn. We got some fun stuff coming up. Oh, you're going to love it, dude. You're going to just love it. It's going to be
Speaking
awesome.
of, I know you're teasing me here.
No,
I have
it's
no
coming.
idea what's coming.
Yeah.
But I have almost forgot to mention, speaking of Midtown Mo, I'm going to have a Raiders live show next Friday on the 17th, talking about a lot of the Raiders offseason targets as far as draft and free agency.
This is on Bleacher Report.
This is on Bleacher Report.
Yes,
It'll
Bleacher Report live.
It'll start Friday, I believe, at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. So
Lunchtime.
get in the chat. I usually go in the chat and read out the comments. So, if you're active, you have your opinions, you disagree, whatever, hop in the Bleacher Report chat with me, and I'll read out some of your comments and even answer if you have a question.
Okay, and so wardrobe for that, are we going to be in a leather coat since you're Midtown Mo now? What are you going to...
I usually hop on there with a fresh fade. I usually get a fade the day before.
Yes.
And then I get on, and then usually have, some, you'll see. I'm going to change it up this time.
But you got, now you're Midtown Mo. So like you can do hoodie on this show, but on that show now you got to step it up a little bit.
Being challenged by Scott in my wardrobe.
You got to step. I mean, I don't know, leather, something.
A rope chain,
suede.
You want to go an 80? You want to go 80s rope chain? How about that?
I don't see you at a rope chain. I just don't see that.
Boombox rope chain.
Do we need to get you like a Silver and Black Today logo bling?
nice big.
I might get one. Yeah, no.
A nice 20-pound piece hanging off of my neck as I'm.
Mo, why are you like this on the show all the time? It's the chain.
Gotta have fun with it,
You do. We have fun on this show. We're gonna have a lot of fun this summer too. We'll have goofy stuff coming on. We're gonna get some Raider greats on too. We're gonna do all kinds of great stuff. So stick with us. Subscribe to the podcast or subscribe on YouTube. Mo, have a good one, man. I will talk to you on Thursday. All right. For our producer, David Stepanian, and for Moe and I, I'm Scott Branson. We appreciate you guys being here. Again, subscribe to the podcast. We will talk to you again on Thursday, including our infamous and popular Raider Nation mailbag segment. So join us then, and we will talk to you. Have a great week, everybody, and enjoy yourselves. And remember, keep a little positivity out there. Take care, everybody.